What's going on, lads and lasses? Welcome back to the channel. So, of course, that name once again is being linked with Newcastle United. HUGO Ekitike. We all remember that name from back in 2022, of course, when Newcastle were looking at him at Rams. He is back on the list of players being looked at once again, and also Mark Guehi is continuing to be looked at by the club, and a new one of Ollie Watkins, of course, or an old one of Ollie Watkins, because he has been linked as well. But let's get into it in this video. So first off, before we get into the video to talk about that, of course, I do want to say that there is a lot of people watching these videos that isn't subscribed to the channel. So if you could please subscribe to the channel, that would massively help the channel to grow moving forward. I do want to try and get the channel's subscriber base up, as I'm trying to reach 2.5k subscribers and then go on from there higher. And I can only do that with the support from you lads and lasses. So just a little shout out there for that. So please, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing, and also hit the bell so you don't miss any of these videos. If you do like the content, then it does massively help the channel to grow if you can hit that subscribe button as well, and of course the like button. It's all free, doesn't cost you a thing, and it does massively help the channel to grow. But let's get back into the content. So let's go with the biggest news. Obviously first, it is the HUGO Ekitike news. Now, it's been going around for quite a while, and for the last few weeks we've seen, you know, this news coming around of HUGO Ekitike being linked to Newcastle United once again. I mean, we just have to go back to 2022. You know, Newcastle had a 25 million bid in. We were all but pretty much complete on the deal. The medical was already done. He was just having to sign really on the dotted line, and he chose a move to PSG. His agent, of course, played a factor in that, but at the end of the day, he still had, you know, the free will to also make up his own opinion on that one. And we all know what happened when he went to PSG. Obviously, you know, he flopped. He didn't get the game time that he thought he was going to get. I mean, why would he at the end of the day? You know, they had Kylian Mbappe. Why they're going to play HUGO Ekitike when you've got Kylian Mbappe up top? So that was obvious that that was never going to work out for the lad. But now he's excelling at Eintracht Frankfurt in the German league. He's just had a brilliant 24-25 campaign, and he's right back on the lips of Newcastle United. And of course, the hierarchy at the club really want to see this lad at the turn. And at 86 million, 100 million euros release clause, 86 million pounds, all money, of course, is quite a hefty fee for this lad. Now, Newcastle view the guy as depth for Isak, not as a replacement for Isak. So the rumours going around from all these other clubs that are desperate to get Isak to play for them, you know, licking their lips and thinking, wow, if Newcastle go out and get HUGO Ekitike, that's going to mean, you know, we can get Isak. And that is not the case with that news right there. You know, Newcastle have said that this is a depth for Isak. It's more to fill the void of what Callum Wilson has just left at the club. I mean, Callum Wilson's no longer at the club now. We obviously need somebody that's going to come in and be a backup striker to Isak. And who better, you know, than somebody like HUGO Ekitike, who is banging in goals in the Bundesliga. Now, I know it's the Bundesliga. It is a weaker league compared to the Premier League, in my opinion, at least. Other people may think differently. But I've got to say, you know, I don't really see this one going through, to be honest, because we've been here before. And yes, the lad is older now. He might have gotten a little bit more wiser. He obviously doesn't have the same agent anymore, because that agent that did that deal for his move to PSG, of course, left after getting his move to PSG. Not long after, of course. So my opinion on this one is to just take it with a pinch of salt. It is quite a hefty fee of 86 million. So that right there for me is sort of a stumbling block on it to begin with. You know, we can't be throwing too much money at one player, and 86 million as well for somebody to be a backup to Alexander Isak. It just doesn't sound, you know, plausible. It doesn't sound like it is something that would happen, in my opinion. So take that one with a pinch of salt. But let's move on swiftly to the other end of the pitch. Let's talk about the Marc Guehi situation now. Last season, before last season in the summer, of course, of last season, we were desperately trying to get Marc Guehi to Newcastle United. We tried all of last summer to get Marc Guehi in. Palace just kept moving the goalposts on. We're constantly, every single time, Steve Parish just moving the goalposts. We're coming into this season, into this summer window, and again, Marc Guehi is obviously on the minds, in the lips of everybody, you know, in Newcastle United, in the hierarchy. Eddie Howe desperately wants to have Marc Guehi at Newcastle United. There is alternative options there as well, which we will talk about in the video. But I mean, 50 to 65 million is the fee that is being mentioned that Palace could demand. I think that was around about the fee that we were going with last season as well, and then Palace will keep moving the goalposts. There's going to be a lot of people in for Marc Guehi. Obviously, I've talked about it already on the channel of, you know, Liverpool being interested in him because they're needing a centre back. Arsenal's also interested as well as other teams are interested. So there could possibly be a bidding war for Marc Guehi, which that would benefit, you know, Crystal Palace immensely. But Guehi is entering the final year of his contract, and that puts a lot more power on the table for the teams like ourselves, like Liverpool, like Arsenal, and any other team that is wanting Marc Guehi. That puts a lot more power on the table for the teams that are wanting to buy him, rather than Palace, who is trying to sell him. Because if the player's only entering into his final year of his contract, that means that by next year, if Palace don't sell him in this window, Palace could lose him for free next year in 2026. So that right there puts a lot more power into the hands of ourselves, into the hands of Liverpool, into the hands of Arsenal, and whoever else wants Marc Guehi. So can Palace really demand the 50 to 65 million? That would probably be what they'd be asking, but there's going to be a lot of clubs coming in maybe lower than that to get it to, you know, just below the 50 to 65 million mark, in my opinion. But it's definitely a one to watch. But like I say, there is alternative options that we are looking at. We're looking at Leonardo Ballardi from Marseille, and we're also obviously looking at, who I mentioned yesterday, Giorgio Schiavoni of Atalanta as well. So there's options being looked at, not like last season where we went all in trying to get Marc Guehi. We couldn't get him, and then we were left in a situation where we needed that centre back. We didn't get the centre back, and then we were in a situation all season where we had, you know, Sven Botman out injured, Jamal Lascelles out injured, and we had to go with the likes of Dan Burn and Fabian Shaw back in the centre back roles. But to be honest, you know, Burn and Shaw did a brilliant job, but we do need to start trying to get some younger players in that centre back in the defensive role. I mean, looking at with defensive line right now, we've got brilliant right back in Tino Livramento. We've got brilliant backup right back of Kieran Trippier, and then a brilliant backup right back behind that of behind Trippier of Emil Kraft. Then on the left back position, we've got, you know, the young Lewis Hall, and then we've got backups of Target. Tino can also play on the left back role as well, so that means if we wanted to, we could play, you know, Trippier on the right back role and play Tino Livramento on the left back role if, you know, Lewis Hall was not fully fit for a game. But that's an area that is always going to be an area we need to improve in. And until we do, it will be an area that will be watched quite closely. We do have to focus on the defensive side of things as well as the attacking side of things. But we're starting to look really, really good up top now. Obviously, Anthony Elanga coming in, of course, just recently. Isak, Gordon, and then we've got Barnes, Murphy, Us up there as well. And then the midfield side of things, again, you know, we're looking pretty good there as well with Big Joe, Bruno, Sandro, Lewis Miley. Looks like maybe Sean Longstaff might be moving on from Newcastle on that one as well in the midfield. But that takes us swiftly on to another name that has been mentioned, and that is, of course, Ollie Watkins. Watkins has been rumoured, but it's a little less concrete than the Ekitike and Guehi links. He is Premier League proven. He is a consistent goal scorer, and he is hard-working as well. The only concerns with this one is that, obviously, you know, Villa are going to be asking crazy money for him, 60 mil plus. And for a 29-year-old, I don't think that is a worthy investment. And there's not really any sell-on value there. At least with Ekitike, he's, you know, 23 years old. He's still got, you know, a lot of time left in the game. So if we did want to move Ekitike on, you know, then we could at least make quite a bit of money off of him. But with Ollie Watkins, he's 29 years old. He's probably got maybe 4 or 5 years left in the game, if that. So, you know, taking a massive chunk of 60 million plus out for to buy somebody like Ollie Watkins, and again, you know, is a second choice behind Isak. That's pretty hefty fee, I've got to say. And I couldn't really see Ollie Watkins wanting to come to neither to be a backup to Isak. I mean, he had the same problem at Aston Villa with John Duran. You know, he was complaining about Duran being ahead of him, and then Duran left and he got to take over the role, of course, at Villa again to be the number one striker for them. But I couldn't see him coming to us to be a backup behind Isak, not at 29 years old. He's obviously going to want to have first team opportunities, and that's something we can't offer because obviously Isak is always going to be our first choice striker. I mean, you don't leave somebody as lethal as Isak on the bench. So that's my thoughts on them. Of course, rumours going around at the moment. The conclusion is Newcastle are targeting top tier reinforcements in attack and defence. Balancing the act with the PSR makes it a strategic move from where we've got to keep balancing the books until we can get that PSR up, until we can start making higher, you know, sponsorship deals. And we can only do that once we hear the conclusion of the APT2 case, which is not until October. So whatever we're going to do, we need to do it in this window, and then of course see what happens with that APT2 case in October. And if it goes in favour of, you know, us, where it allows us to be able to put in higher sponsorship deals. And I don't mean, when I say higher sponsorship deals, I don't mean going out there, you know, and putting $1 billion sponsorship deal in. I mean just, you know, to a level where we're on equal playing field with even the lowest earner of the cartel teams, of, you know, them teams at the top end, who are allowed to have these bigger sponsorship deals. But let us know your thoughts, you know, down in the comments below. Which one would you choose? Which one would you sign if you had the chance to sign, you know, one of these players? Which one would it be? Would it be Ekitike? Would it be Guehi? Would it be Ollie Watkins? Or would it be, you know, 2 out of the 3? Or would it be all 3? Let us know down in the comments below. And as I say, there is a lot of you watching the channel that aren't subscribed. So if you could, please It only takes a moment to subscribe. It's completely free, doesn't cost you nothing, and it does massively help support the channel going forward. Till next time, I'll see you all in the next one. Away the lads.